I am Leonardo da Vinci. Before I painted the Mona Lisa, before they spoke my name in distant cities, before kings waited for my thoughts, I was just a boy, a quiet boy, watching the sky. The birds came first. They moved in ways I could not understand. They did not struggle. They did not hesitate. They simply rose, and the sky accepted them. I remember standing there, still, looking upward, feeling something I could not yet name. Not envy, not admiration, something deeper, a question. Why them and not us? That question never left me. It followed me into every moment of my life. It lived inside my mind like a second heartbeat. I was born in the year 1452 in a small village called Vinci, a quiet place, a forgotten place, surrounded by hills and silence, the kind of silence that allows thoughts to grow. I was not born into greatness. I was not born into power, and I was not born into legitimacy. I was born outside expectation, outside certainty, outside destiny. And because of that, I was free. Free to observe, free to wonder, free to see what others ignored. I watched water more than I watched people. Water never moved the same way twice. It curved. It resisted. It adapted. It obeyed laws I could feel, but could not yet explain. I would sit beside streams for hours, not speaking, not moving, just watching. People thought I was distracted, but I was studying motion, studying design, studying truth. Everything around me was a teacher. The wind, the shadows, the flight of birds, the structure of leaves. They spoke a language older than words, and I wanted to understand it. Not for fame, not for recognition, but because I could not stop myself. Curiosity is not a choice, it is a condition. It lives inside you, and it does not let you rest. When I was 14 years old, my father sent me away to Florence. Florence was different. It was alive, full of noise, full of ambition, full of men trying to leave something behind. It was there that I entered the workshop of Andrea del Verrocchio. He was a master, and I was nothing. An apprentice, a pair of hands, a silent observer. I swept floors, prepared tools, watched others create, and I learned, not from instruction, but from observation. I watched how light touched surfaces, how shadows revealed form, how stillness could suggest movement, and slowly, the world began to change. I no longer saw objects. I saw systems. I saw structure. I saw design beneath appearance. To paint a hand, I needed to understand bones. To paint bones, I needed to understand motion. To paint motion, I needed to understand life itself. And so I began to study everything, not because I was told to, but because I had to. At night, when the workshop fell silent, my real work began. I filled pages with sketches, hands, wings, machines, ideas, endless ideas. They came faster than I could control them, and I feared losing them. So I wrote everything down, sometimes in reverse, not to confuse others, but to protect the fragile nature of thought. Ideas are delicate. They vanish if not captured, and my mind was overflowing with them. I did not sleep easily, not because I was restless, but because my thoughts refused to stop. They moved without permission, without mercy, without end. This was my gift and my burden. I did not yet know where it would lead me. I only knew one thing. I could not ignore it. Because I was not becoming an artist, I was becoming something else, something I did not yet understand, a mind. Florence taught me how to see, but it did not teach me enough. There is a moment when learning becomes confinement, when the walls around you become too small for the questions inside your mind. I felt it growing, slowly at first, then all at once, a pressure, a need to go further, to see more, to understand more. Florence was full of artists, men who wanted recognition, men who wanted immortality. But I wanted something else. I wanted truth. Not the appearance of truth, not the illusion of truth, truth itself. And so, I left. In the year 1482, I walked away from Florence, and I went to Milan. Milan was different, harder, colder, more ambitious. It was a city of power, a city of rulers, a city where usefulness mattered more than beauty. And I understood this. So when I wrote to Ludovico Sforza, the Duke of Milan, I did not speak of painting. I spoke of engineering. I told him I could build bridges, machines, weapons. I told him I could strengthen his armies, protect his cities, because I understood something important. Power listens to those who expand it. And he listened to me. He brought me into his court, not as a painter, but as a mind he believed could shape his world. Milan became my home, but more importantly, it became my laboratory. It was there that my real work began. In 1483, I began painting something different. Not a portrait, not a commission, an idea. It would be called the Virgin of the Rocks, but to me, it was something else. It was an experiment. I placed the figures inside a cave, not in heaven, not in glory, but in shadow. Because truth does not live in perfection. It lives in mystery. I studied how light behaves in darkness, how it moves slowly, how it reveals form piece by piece. Nothing in nature appears instantly. Everything emerges, gradually, quietly. And I wanted my painting to breathe the same way, to feel alive, to feel real. Not like an image, but like a moment, suspended, waiting. This was the difference between painting and understanding. One copies the surface, the other reveals what lies beneath. But even this was not enough, because my curiosity had turned inward, toward the human body, the most complex structure I had ever seen. Every movement was precise. Every gesture was mechanical. But hidden beneath flesh was a system I needed to see. So I began to study anatomy, not as an artist, but as an observer of structure. At night, when the world slept, I worked. I studied muscles, tendons, proportion, the architecture of motion. Because how could I paint life if I did not understand what made it move? These nights were silent, lonely, but I did not feel alone, because I was surrounded by discovery. Each page I filled brought me closer, not to mastery, but to understanding. Understanding was always my true goal, not fame, not legacy. Understanding. By the year 1495, I was no longer unknown. My work had begun to spread. My name had begun to travel. But recognition does not bring peace. It brings expectation, and expectation becomes its own kind of prison. Ludovico Sforza came to me with a request. Not a machine, not a weapon, a painting, a wall inside a monastery, a place of silence, a place where time itself seemed to hesitate. He wanted me to paint the Last Supper. Others had painted it before, many times, but repetition has never interested me. If I was to paint it, I needed to understand it. Not the story, but the moment. There is always a moment where everything changes. A single breath, a single realization, a single sentence that divides existence forever. I chose that moment. The exact second Christ said, "One of you will betray me." Not after, not before, but during. Because truth lives in reaction, not in stillness. I studied men for months. Their faces, their hands, their silence. I watched how fear appeared before words, how anger revealed itself in hesitation, how betrayal lived quietly inside uncertainty. And I brought those truths into the painting. Each face became a different mind. Each gesture became a different emotion. Each figure became a different human truth. This was not painting. This was observation. For 3 years, I lived inside that wall. 1495, 1496, 1497, 1498. Every shadow mattered. Every expression mattered. Every detail became permanent. When it was finished, the room was no longer a room. It became a moment, frozen forever. But completion did not bring peace. It never did. Because my mind had already moved forward, still searching, still questioning, still refusing to stop. Around the year 1503, she appeared. Lisa. She sat before me, still, silent, but her silence was alive. I began slowly, carefully, patiently. I was not painting her face. I was painting her consciousness, the space between thought and expression. This would become the Mona Lisa. But she was never finished, because the human mind is never finished, and neither was mine. I carried her with me, not as a painting, but as a question that would outlive me. Because questions never die. They wait, waiting for someone else to continue them. Time does not ask for permission. It simply moves forward, quietly, without hesitation. By now, my body had begun to slow, but my mind refused to obey. Ideas still came to me, uninvited, unfinished, unrelenting. I continued to draw. Machines that could fly, cities that could breathe, structures that could outlive their creators. Some would never be built. Some would never be understood. But they existed, and that was enough, because existence begins in thought. Everything begins in thought. Around this time, I painted another figure, a calm figure, still, certain. The world would later call it Salvator Mundi, but to me, it was something simpler, was presence. The kind of presence that does not demand attention, but receives it naturally. His eyes did not follow you. They understood you. His hand did not command. It allowed. This was power, not force, not dominance, but certainty. Certainty requires no explanation. In 1516, I left Italy, the land that had shaped me, the land that had defined me. I went to France at the invitation of King Francis I. He welcomed me not as a servant, but as an equal. He saw not only my work, but my mind. He gave me a home, a quiet place, a place where thought could continue. I brought my notebooks, thousands of pages, thousands of questions, thousands of unfinished answers, and I brought her, the Mona Lisa. She had followed me for years, not because she was complete, but because she was alive. Some things are never finished, because they are never meant to end. My assistants remained beside me, Francesco Melzi, faithful, observant. He understood what others did not, that my true work was never the paintings. It was the thinking behind them. As my body weakened, my mind remained awake, still observing, still questioning, still searching. Even at the end, curiosity remained. Curiosity does not age. Curiosity does not weaken. Curiosity does not die. In the year 1519, my body began its final rest, but my mind was still moving, still asking the same question it had asked since childhood. Why? Why does the bird fly? Why does the hand move? Why does the mind think? And why does curiosity never leave us? People would later call me a genius, but genius is not intelligence. Genius is persistence. It is the refusal to stop, the refusal to accept ignorance, the refusal to silence curiosity. I was not seeking greatness. I was seeking understanding, and understanding has no end. Even now, my questions remain, waiting for the next mind to continue them. I was Leonardo da Vinci, and I never stopped thinking.